What's up, everybody? Welcome to Real Ones. My name is Michael Pina, and I'm a senior staff writer at TheRinger.com. This is a true honor for me, filling in for my esteemed colleagues Howard Beck and Logan Murdoch as the host of today's show. I am doubly honored to be joined on the other line by someone who has forgotten more about basketball than I have ever learned. A man who led the 2007-2008 NBA playoffs in three-point percentage and cracked not one but two all-defensive teams in his 12-year NBA career. The great Raja Bell. Raja, what's up, man?
Michael, listen, thank you so much for coming on. It is an honor. I would just say, if you're going to intro me like that all the time, bro, this is a standing invitation. Howard and Logan, I mean, I don't get that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I appreciate that. I'm blushing a little bit. Thank you.
Always. I try to be polite. I try to show my manners. So let's just hop right in, Raja. Yeah. We're about 25 games into this NBA season, and earlier this week on TheRinger.com, I gave awards out for the first quarter of this season. So it was less of a prediction of who will win everything and more just an assessment of how things have played out so far for MVP, Rookie of the Year, Most Improved Player, et cetera, all the main categories. And so on today's show, I figured it would be fun to gauge where we're at by going over each award. Pretty much all of them are debatable and competitive, and there are a lot of valid candidates for each one. So without further ado, why don't we start with the award everyone cares the most about, and that is clearly Most Valuable Player. So, Raja, through the first quarter of this season, who is the NBA's MVP, and why is it obviously Nikola Jokic?
Yeah, I mean, why is it obviously Nikola Jokic? Listen, a guy's averaging 30 on 55% shooting, 13 boards and 10 assists. He's a three-time, MVP already. I just don't. I think this is less about me explaining why those numbers speak for themselves. Like that's an incredible amount of work, and more of an apology. Like I need to go back maybe 4 years. I need to go back, right? Where like it was already MVP Nikola Jokic, but I saw it as like a 1 year type of deal, like having a phenomenal player, but having like an out of body, almost like otherworldly year. And I certainly didn't see the sustained brilliance. I converted a couple years ago, a year thereafter when he was still doing it. But like, I still feel like I need to go back, Michael, if I'm being honest, and just apologize, because what more could you do? Like literally, what more can he do?
That's a great way to put it. What more can he do? You had some of the numbers, the basic numbers. Like he's third, if it's just like, comparing him to everybody else. He's third in scoring. He's first in rebounding. He's second in assists. Last night against the Cavs in a loss, he passed Magic Johnson for career triple doubles. Magic Johnson.
Right.
He's shooting 50% from behind the 3-point line this year, which is third highest in the league on a career high 4.2 attempts per game. And, like all the advanced numbers love him and everything. But one of the things that I noticed in last night's games against the Cavs that really stood out to me that was fascinating, the on-off metrics are wild. He's, when he's on the court, they outscore their opponent by 1 million points. And when he sits, the Denver Nuggets would lose to the Washington Generals. But last night when he was on the bench, Michael Malone did something very interesting. He played Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Christian Brown, and Peyton Watson together for the first time this season. So that's the other 4 starters, plus Peyton Watson, who's probably you could quibble, probably their other best bench player. And it struck me as like Malone grasping for straws. Like there's just nothing. And that lineup, by the way, was like not very successful. So like, what do you do when this dude sits? Like, and that to me is value. Like when he's on the court, he makes everybody else better. He's individually dominant and the team is great. And when he sits, they stink. And that's just like, that's value to me.
For sure. I mean, that's the best argument for it, right? Like the stats speak for themselves. But the point of the matter is, if you extract them from that situation, there is no real situation, right? Like once, I mean, I don't want to say literally, it's so cliche and I say it all the time, but almost every single thing that has to do with them being effective offensively and having an opportunity to be successful starts and ends with him. And that's not to downplay how good of players the rest of them are individually, but that just happens sometimes. Like, for whatever it's worth, like let's take it back to those Suns teams when I played with Steve. Amari is a brilliant basketball player. Sean Marion's incredible. Boris Diaw, like these are incredible players. Leandro Barbosa, you take Steve out, especially given the style of play we were playing, and it doesn't work the same. And I'd even make an argument that team would work better without Steve than this one does without Nikola, right? Like, so that's a great point, Michael. Like, we could do all the numbers. We could talk about how incredible, like a guy of that size shooting 50% from the 3-point line on 4.2 attempts per game is like, that's bananas in and of itself. But the reality is, just look at them when he's not on the court. Like, look at the efficiency and how that runs when he is not the conduit. And that's telling you everything you need to know.
So I actually had a question. I'm so happy you brought up those Suns teams and Steve Nash, and you mentioned Boris Diaw as well. When I watch Jokic, to me, he's up there with LeBron as the smartest player I've ever seen. And I was curious if you agree with that when you watch him play and you see him call out defensive, he knows what's going to happen. When he's on defense, he knows what is going to happen, what the offense is going to run from sideline out of bound and baseline out of bound plays. I've seen him physically move teammates into different spots on the court where they need to be because he anticipates the action. For you, first of all, do you agree with that assessment when you watch him? And then also, I'm curious, like, who's some of the smartest players that you've played with, and how does that kind of I guess just show itself on a basketball court?
Yeah. What's interesting, because I do agree with you 100%. Like his ability to kind of play chess out there, like mentally, and understand how all the pieces are moving around the board in real time is pretty remarkable. LeBron does it. The interesting part, Boris Diaw definitely did it.
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting part about them, because they're bigger players, is like it gets more. I think there's a bigger spotlight on them doing it because you traditionally didn't see bigs in that regard. Most of your all-time great point guards, before they became combo point guards, most of the guys that set the table and lived on facilitating first and then scoring, that's what they did. Like, that's the game they were playing up top. Like Magic, Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton, like Jason Kidd, those guys were playing. They did that. But I think, as we've evolved as a game, you're seeing bigger bodies do it now. People that aren't necessarily playing the true, hey, I'm bringing it up the court every time position. And so, there's a kind of like a bigger spotlight on that, which is interesting to me. But Steve Nash is certainly in that mix of players where, you just feel it when you're playing with them. I came into the league. Avery Johnson was good at that too when I first came in. The Spurs were the first real training camp where I had a chance to make the team. I had went to training camp with Atlanta, and they had just traded for J.R. Rider and Jimmy Jackson. I was a rookie. This was going to be like a kind of a favor for my agent, just to get my feet wet and let Atlanta see me in a camp scenario. But I wasn't going to make it. So I wasn't really like probably locked in like I should have been. When I got to San Antonio, there was a real opportunity, and I was really locked in as to like, how are we playing? Like, where do I need to be? I understood pick and roll better. I kind of knew spacing better. So you got the feel from like those great points, and I'm using Avery as an example here, of how much they understood by what they were telling you to do, like non-verbally. So like, if you're coming down the court and you're in the wrong place and he's like shaking you off, like waving you, like kind of like, yo, get out of there, get out of there, get out of there. Like, you're like, and as a young player not knowing what's going on, I'm like, oh fuck, I got to get out of here. Where am I going? All right, I'll go to the other side and stand in the corner. and then something springs wide open on that side of the court, and then it's dawning on you as a young player at lunch, like, God, dog, he like saw 4 seconds into the future in a way that I didn't. Like he knew what was going to open up if I was not in that spot, and he got me out of there. So that's how at the time I was becoming aware of like these guys and their minds as it related to like, if this happens, that's going to happen. It's not unlike playing quarterback, where like you know what the defensive structure in the shell looks like, you know what people's responsibilities are, and you know that if you stress that guy and his responsibilities, the dominoes that fall after that, right? So in theory, if I stretch that guy and he's got to make the call to take the flat away, like, you know, in a cover 2, let's say, right? Like, and then I'm going to challenge the safety and bring him a little down to the sideline with like a corner, like I can leverage that other safety to the boundary, and the middle of that field should open up. Well, they're doing that on a basketball court without the huddles and without the play calls in their ear.
Right.
So like Steve, you know, all the great PGs did it. I would say from a big perspective, like Shaquille O'Neal was phenomenal at that, who I played with. Like, and I knew that as soon as he got to Phoenix, because he would tell me, you know, like, hey man, I'm going to make your job even easier than it's ever been. Like you do this, that, and that. I'm going to find you in the corner. Just give me 2 seconds and let it collapse. And then I'm going to, and you're like, oh fuck, what? Okay. And then before you know it, you're shooting a 3 out of the corner. So, I mean, that's a long answer, Michael. I got kind of like in my like nostalgia bag there, but I'm trying to think real time of guys I played with that just had Boris Diaw. I don't know who I saw on their podcast. It might have been Steven Jackson, who spent some time with him in Charlotte and gave him his flowers. And he's a show, you know, friend of the show, but I don't think people really understood what Boris was. They got an appreciation for him because he went on to win championships and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But cerebrally, Michael, I'd put him up there with just literally, and it's going to sound crazy, anybody.
Watching Boris Diaw, and you're right. Like I feel like he was ahead of his time in so many different ways because of the skill set in that body, as you were referring to. Like the players who were manipulating actions were usually point guards, and they were like 6'2", 6'3", whatever. And I think that the league and the sport didn't really know what to do with someone like Boris until he was able to. I mean, he played really well for you guys, obviously, and then in San Antonio, it kind of went to the next level in the postseason. Is there anyone else, just talking about MVP candidates, who you think deserve some shine here?
I mean, look, there are guys that deserve shine, but I don't have anybody. I mean, SGA's playing great, Jason Tatum's playing great, like their names, Michael. But if I'm being fair to Nikola, and I started off by apologizing, like I do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I could throw some names at you, but like not in the same convo for me. What about, I'd be curious, you, like, can you make a case?
So the one, if I were to play devil's advocate and you're talking to someone who I have a Nikola Jokic poster behind me, like it's the only poster my wife would let me hang in our whole home. So like I think like if I were to play devil's advocate, they're 11-8 or 11-9 right now. Yep. So and in 8th place in the standings, and I think that people frown upon that. I don't care at all. Like I think that, he missed 3 games because of the birth of his son, and they lost 2 of them, I think. And like, I just think in terms of value, I don't care about standings or record really at this stage in the going. Shea's been great. Tatum's been great. Giannis has been otherworldly, just statistically, and he's actually hitting jump shots now, which is kind of scary. But yeah, I think it's Jokic for sure. Let's move on to Defensive Player of the Year. My pick for this was Victor Wembanyama, and I think that there are some other qualified candidates for sure. But at the same time, Raja, I don't know how you feel, but I just think this guy's going to win this award, barring injury, for a decade. Like, it's scary.
He covers up. I mean, It's another one where you want names, like you could go the names, like you could go like Jaren Jackson, Evan Mobley,
Right.
Dyson Daniels for today and moving forward. Like they're names, but when you have a dude that covers so many boxes defensively, like it just checks so many boxes defensively, when he's healthy, I don't know how you get the award out of his hands. Like I don't know, Michael. Like I like a lot of this episode is going to be me reflecting like to when I played and seeing what people can't quantify, right? Like sorry, is you see the stats, right? You see the blocks, you see the board, you see all of that. What it's hard for like the naked untrained eye to quantify is like the adjustments that size and agility would make you as an offensive player make that would affect your field goal percentage, but it doesn't result in a block or a turnover. And the amount of those per game for him would be probably, aside from maybe Wilt, like the most ever. Because I can't imagine like getting somewhere and thinking, hey, you're good to squeeze here. And we all have this little internal timer as offensive players, and we're able to calibrate distance from a defender, amount of time that I'm going to need to get this shot off. And I either check mark that and it's green light for me to go, or I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to end well and let me swing that, right? And we're doing that in a fraction of a second. Well, he changes all math. He just changes all the math because he's so long. And so it would be a nightmare to get anywhere around in his vicinity and think that it was open and then get midway through a shot and he's just thrown your rhythm off because you're not sure whether he's within range, or you're not sure whether you're going to be able to convert that pass because that fucker's standing over there. And you can't quantify that.
No, it's like, it's remarkable. The attempts to quantify it are like, just, there are statistics you can look at, but to me, it's more impressive watching him play and watching him intimidate, watching him change, as you outlined wonderfully, just change the process of how an offensive player is going through a possession. And the thing that really stands out to me, that's the scariest part, is when he makes a mistake, he's long enough and agile enough to correct it in real time. So it's like
cleans it up.
Yeah, it's like he's his own safety net. Like he's pressing pause on time, pressing rewind, and then moving, and is able to impact the play. It's remarkable. And the fact that, again, he's 20 years old. I don't know what the ceiling is here for someone like that. I mean, is he just going to get stronger? Like what is the future for him, do you think, as a defender?
Yeah, I mean, this was the conversation when he was coming into the league, when people were trying to project what that looked like. And honestly, yes, he continues to get stronger. He continues to grow in understanding of what's happening. Like he continues to grow in all of these areas. The only real thing, and you don't even want to put that out I won't put it out in the atmosphere, but it's the obvious thing that could derail something like that, right? Like, but I'm not, like, other than that, yeah, he's just going to continue to get better. And like, let's just go to like what you're taught as an offensive player, like a guard, right? Like you're taught as you get to the rim with bigs to take it to them, right? Like as an offensive guard, probably 4 to 5 inches shorter than the normal big, maybe 6 to 7. Like if I get to the rim and try to run away from you and put the ball out, a lot of times that's allowing you to hit your apex as a jumper or as a vertical threat, and your long arms are going to gobble up that shot in a way that most of the time that's not the right recipe for me to try to avoid you. So you're taught to like seek the contact and ground that guy to the floor, put him in jail, right? So the thought behind it is like, I get downhill, you're waiting to time up a jump to block my shot. I hit you in the chest in a way that doesn't allow you to time up your jump.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives me that fraction of a second to sneak the ball up before you can leave the floor. Well, he's too fucking long to do that too. Like he's too long. It doesn't matter. Like his arm is still out there in a way that split second doesn't matter to him. So that's just from a guard perspective. From a big perspective, I mean, these guys are taught to, like, head fake, maybe use the rim, the type of things that would get someone in the air or get them out of position where you could, because you are 6'11", just quick it in the basket real quick. Like I got to finish up and over you. These guys don't. They just got to get you to leave the floor, and then they're right at the rim. He cleans it up. He jumps on your head fake, hits the ground, and he's still standing up blocking your shot. It's really it's otherworldly as far as what people in this generation have seen in terms of like a big. Most of those guys, like Sean Bradley, I played with Sean Bradley, right? A human eraser. And I love Sean, great dude, man. But like not mobile at all. So if you could mitigate that by just moving it in some way, shape, or form. And it just, once he was moved, he couldn't get over there. Right? Well, this dude moves like a cat. Right? I mean, he does. So like, I'm not doing it justice. It sounds like I'm just like fawning over it, and I am to some degree, but I mean, I didn't get a chance to play against something like that. It would be unnerving, I think, at times.
I feel like the NBA should give out a trophy for the runner-up in Defensive Player of the Year for the next 10 years.
For the next decade, right?
Yeah. And like building off that concept, if Victor didn't exist, who would be the best defender through the first quarter of the season? Who has impressed you the most on that side of the ball?
I'd probably go with Jaren Jackson. I think. Evan Mobley's great. If I'm keeping it a buck, the one I've been most impressed with, I don't know that I'd necessarily give him the award, is Dyson Daniels.
Love Dyson Daniels.
Yeah, I'm most impressed with, but I don't know that I could give you that award yet. Draymond Green's fantastic still,
of course.
But those names, I'd probably go Jaren Jackson for the award, but my favorite is Dyson Daniels.
Love watching Dyson Daniels play. Absolute hawk. I want to shout out Chris Dunn too with the Clippers, who's recently bumped into the starting lineup there. He's just everywhere, doing everything. A lot of great defenders in the league right now, and it's really fun. And that's something that you can speak to much better than I ever will in a million years.
You know what's cool, Michael? No, sorry, dude, but like you know what you're talking about, bro. Don't be you're. I appreciate that, but you know what you're talking about, dude. The cool part about when rules change in any sport, is the cause and effect for me, right? Like you change the rules because offense is what people want to see, and viewership and everything. And we kind of complain because it strips certain things out, but within 2, 3, 4, 5 years, like you start to the effect becomes you get some incredible defenders that have to defend in a different way, and therefore they don't have all these tools of physicality and beating you up at their disposal, become even better defenders than you saw in the previous generation.
That's such a fascinating point. And it's like guys are having to adapt, right? And play within parameters that do not give them an advantage at all. But also at the same time, this season, we're seeing, this leads me into the next category, that we're seeing more physicality, I feel like, allowed in the league. Not in every game I watch, but there are possessions and stretches where I'm like, that would have been a foul 2 years ago. Much sooner, and that possession would have been whistled dead. And this brings me to Coach of the Year. So there's a lot of great coaches. I think this award is really based on preseason expectations above anything. I picked by the slightest of margins Ime Udoka for this. Okay. I just think that talking about physicality and defense, Houston's defense, like I wrote this in my piece, but like raise your hand if you thought they'd have the second best defense in the NBA through 20-something games. And this team just has an identity. They crash the offensive glass. They get back in transition. Those two things used to be impossible, thought to be impossible to do both at an elite level, and they do. They protect the paint. They play extremely hard, and they have guys who hold each other accountable as a very young team. So I just think that that's what's impressed me the most about Ime. But what are your thoughts on who's been the best or most impressive coach so far?
Yeah, I love Ime. I'm a huge Ime fan, and he would certainly be on a very short list. It's going to be hard for me not to give it to Kenny Atkinson. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
it's
yeah.
and it might be in some regards for the opposite reasons, right? You talked about all that, the defensive stats and Ime's backbone as preaching that and establishing culture in that way and all of that. And really, if I'm being honest, that probably tugs on my heartstrings a little bit more than the other way. But what he's been able to do with them as an offensive unit, what are they, 21-3 right now? Avenge the Boston loss.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's pretty remarkable, man. I'm sure they had a higher ceiling going into the season maybe than Houston, but I still want to give flowers there. It's just been a pretty remarkable. Was it 15-0 or 16-0? Would they start?
I think it was 16. I want to say
16-0. Yeah, like I mean, that's having been on some really good teams that had some hot starts to seasons. Even that is pretty remarkable. I gotta have to give him his flowers.
so. They're third in offense right now, and I think that is the craziest part of all of this. And just like I'm a huge Evan Mobley person. I went to Cleveland a couple years ago, spent about a week there to do a story on him, got to sit down, talk to him. And I've been such a believer in this person does not need to shoot threes to be a dominant two-way NBA player. And I think it's really cool and fun to see like he's not shooting threes. It's not a thing that's happening, yet he is so much better than he was last season. And he's way more aggressive. They're allowed to play through him at the elbow and he can grab and go off the defensive glass. And, if you just look at I think one of the more telling stats of this team is Donovan Mitchell's touches from last year to this year, biggest drop in the whole NBA. Donovan Mitchell touches per game. Yeah. So shout out to Kenny Atkinson for getting the franchise player, the best player, the perennial all-star on your team to accept that to go further, you need Evan Mobley to develop. You need Darius Garland to develop. You need the bench to Ty Jerome's having a great year. Karis LeVert's having a great year. Isaac Okoro is hitting shots and feeling really comfortable and in rhythm. So Kenny's been tremendous. If he were, he'll probably win this award. I feel like he's already kind of locked it up in the eyes of a lot of people, deservedly so. I just wanted to shout out Ime and give it to him because I think that.
Well, you should. He's a fantastic coach. Like a fantastic coach. The interesting part about the Donovan Mitchell, because I didn't know that stat, there's not a huge slippage in terms of production with that.
Right.
So convincing someone to do that is one thing as a coach, right? Like we all come in. That's coaching, right? I got to come in and I got to get you to buy in, Michael. That's the first step. But then I got to produce on that. So getting Michael to buy in, Michael's this established star with an expectation of production and awards and all of that. I have to be able to give you this vision for doing less effectively, but reaping the same benefit personally. And then therefore as a team, we're going to be exponentially better. I got to execute that as a coach. And that's the cool part about what you just said, touches down the way they are. I wouldn't have been able to tell you that, but numbers are sitting right where they normally are. And the team has gotten exponentially better because of it. That's coaching, the buy-in, the execution, a vision, which furthers buy-in. And now we've got it rolling. And so, that's pretty cool.
Are you a believer in the Cleveland Cavaliers as a legitimate championship contender?
Yeah. Yeah, we're a quarter of the way through the season. You had asked me 3 weeks ago, before the holidays, before I got sick, before all the BS. I would have said the jury is still out. I wanted to see the Boston matchup, the first one. I wanted to see, what that looked like. But even in the loss the first time, I was like, okay, yeah, we're for real. So yes, the answer to that is yes. Yes.
I think I'm in agreement with everything you just said. And I was a little I still want to see, I want to see Allen and Mobley in a postseason setting against one opponent who
Sure.
can really hone in, affect their spacing, take advantage of that. I want to watch that in a playoff series, but I feel like I'm almost nitpicking at the same time. Like they've just been so dominant and impressive, and they have such great talent, such great depth. And I think that, no disrespect to JB Bickerstaff, who I think is a phenomenal coach, I just think Kenny has taken this to a different stratosphere, frankly,
Yeah.
on the offensive end.
Yeah, he unlocked them, and I think your approach. I would be lying. Like I would love the opportunity to do that as well, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and tell you they are my favorite to win it. I too, like you, like there's the next test is that in the playoffs. But like if we're going into those playoffs and you're telling me, hey, give me a field of teams that you would feel comfortable, like they're in that field of teams.
Yeah, I think I agree. Let's move on to rookie of the year. Not a great rookie class. Not the worst rookie class in the history of the NBA, maybe. But just not a great one. You know, why don't you start here, Raja? Tell me what rookie has really stood out to you so far through the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, I'm typically not super dialed into rookies, if I'm being honest, Michael. Like, it's not what I do. Listener, I'm sorry, I apologize, but there is one this year that has stood out for me. I think he stood out for a lot of people, and maybe it's because the Sixers have been having such a tough time anyway, and so like this is just a bright spot for them. But Jared McCain is balling. Like, he's effing balling. Like that's 16 a game on roughly 46%, 38%, 90. Like we're hooping, bro. and we're not hooping on like, hey, catch and shoot, transition. Like I get them when you're not looking hooping. Like we're hooping in my bag hooping. And that's been pretty cool to watch. So for me, it's going to be Jared McCain.
Yeah, when I wrote this column, my brain said Jared McCain. I'm not gonna lie. Statistically, no argument. But then when you watch him play, 3-level scorer.
Yeah, we're
super quick, hooping, so jittery. And in some ways, honestly, Raja, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but like he's been better than Tyrese Maxey in some ways this season, which is a wild thing to say and kind of speaks to how terrible the Sixers have been. Yeah. So my brain said McCain. My soul said Stephon Castle. And this is one of the least efficient shooters in the NBA this season. So I'll get that out of the way. I don't care. He makes so many winning plays on both ends. He's already a plus defender. He already knows how to punish teams who ignore him on the perimeter. His sacrifice cuts are frequent. They're timely. He opens up opportunities for teammates. He guarded Steph in a win. He guarded Shea in a win. He guarded De'Aaron Fox in a win. He's impressive physically in a way that just doesn't look like a rookie when he's out there. And he's super smart. And he's already picking up things that I'm sure Chris Paul is telling him day in and day out. And so Castle, despite the numbers not being, as impressive as McCain's, I still think is like long-term my favorite rookie probably in this class.
Yeah.
But then just what he's done in terms of impacting winning on a team that's actually been competitive has really stood out to me.
Yeah. I could see that. And it's interesting. Like both of their pedigrees are that's a blue blood program. Like they come in and probably from a preparation standpoint at the collegiate level, more ready, if that makes sense. Like just to have that impact that you're kind of talking about. And so I can't be, I wouldn't be mad at you at that. I just, and maybe I have been more exposed, just quite frankly, and full disclosure to Jarrett McCain's body of work because it's more viral sometimes. You know what I mean? Like
absolutely
his offensive bag is just really, really, really advanced for a rookie. Like it's just really advanced. So I'm not going to give you a true argument. I like both of them, but I've just been so impressed with that, I know how hard it is when you come in to score at the NBA level. But to do it with the ball in your hands a lot of the time and having to create it, it's a pretty crazy thing to watch at times.
No, you're right. He's going to win this award, and he's the odds-on favorite by like a considerable margin. And
Yeah.
like, if I don't know what's going on with Joel Embiid, like if he's going to get shut down for the rest of the season tomorrow, it wouldn't shock me. So he's going to put up numbers. Jared McCain's going to put up numbers for the rest of this season, and is a sole bright spot in Philadelphia, which is a total mess right now. Raja, let's move on to most improved player.
You go first. You go first on most improved, because I was all over the place on this one, man. I had so many names. There are so many different arguments. Some of them contradicted the other one. Like, go ahead. You go first.
Yeah, I'll start by saying, like, I hate this award. I think it's so stupid, and there's no like base criteria where we're able to just, like, people before the season started were like, oh, Victor. It's like, no, no, stop it. So I went with Franz Wagner for my pick here, and basically, like, the way I look at it, he's gone from a pretty good sidekick with potential and a max extension that he just signed that was criticized by a ton of people as being an overpay. So he went from that to like a lock for the All-Star team. And I just feel like that is one of the most important leaps a player can make in their career. So I can get into more about him, but like, what other names are, first of all, what do you think about Franz this year?
Yeah, man, he's a player, man. Like, he's one of those guys that, it's what's really hard for front offices to tell sometimes is like what that floor is. Everyone thinks they get it right, and you don't always get it right. Right. And then once you get it right, is like, how sturdy is your frame to build on? And I don't mean physically, but I mean in terms of fundamentals and ability to continue to take those steps into franchise guy, right? Like, his was sturdy as hell. The floor high, and then the frame was great to build on, right? And so what you just see is him continue to build on the game, continue to build on the what's the way do I want to describe that? Responsibility. Like, that's what you're doing with younger players, is just putting more on their plate in terms of responsibility and seeing, can they handle that until we get to like the breaking point. And he's like, yo, I'm good. What's next?
That's
like, right.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it, because Paolo went down and it looked like, I mean, their season could have been like over. No joke. And instead they're in third right now, I think, in the Eastern Conference. They're very good. And, his responsibilities offensively have increased by like more than basically any player, high volume player, high frequency player in the entire NBA. And the way he's dealt with getting blitzed in the pick and roll, the way he's dealt with getting double teamed in isolation, the way he's dealt with seeing layers of defense every time he has the ball in his hands. Like, he's done it all excellent. Like, he's handled it all so well. Right. So I echo what you said for sure. That's a great point. Anybody else?
I did. So Franz was my guy, but like, I went 1A and I went 1B, and I went back and forth on 1A and 1B. And this one's maybe more near and dear to my heart because of, like, didn't really come in with the expectations, fought, scrapped, got some minutes, wasn't getting minutes. Last year was basically a wash for him. But I got to give a shout out to Ty Jerome.
Love it.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Ty Jerome for just continuing. Like, I was actually, the weird thing is, for whatever reason, and I don't love Virginia basketball as a viewing like public, but I liked watching him at Virginia, and I would always say to myself, like,
super smart player.
Like, he's just like that kid's got a brain. You could tell that there were some physical limitations. I had no idea what that was going to translate into in the league, but like, as a hooper, like, he's out there. He's one of the guys we were talking about earlier in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Where like because physically he doesn't exist without playing ahead of you. And so, to be able to continue to stick with that and bounce around and then find a home and being a real big part of something special right now, I gotta give him a shout out.
Awesome for you to bring him up. One of the most efficient players in the entire NBA this season. I had him as a honorable mention for sixth man of the year, frankly.
Yeah, could be.
He's been terrific, and he's a part of winning. He's a part of a winning team, and he contributes to that.
Yeah.
Before we move on from most improved, I just want to shout out RJ Barrett, who has been. Tell me what you've thought of watching RJ Barrett this season, because he's doing things I never thought was possible for him, because I feel like he was so kind of boxed into a role with the Knicks.
Keep going. Yeah,
way he's bloomed with the ball in his hands, playmaking for teammates, making the type of passes where I'm like, that was RJ Barrett who made that pass.
Yeah.
That's just really cool to see. And I think he's third in the whole league right now in baskets in the restricted area, which is just I don't even know what to make of that. That's a shout out to him. That's incredible. What have you thought watching RJ this year?
I think you put it really well, man. I think he's been fantastic. I think what I take away from that the most is the pot that you're put in as a plant, either supporting or restricting your ability to grow into what you're supposed to be. And we don't all get that opportunity. This is a league where, because of the numbers and because of the money spent and the expectation on a team, not everyone's afforded the true opportunity to see exactly what they could be. And that's just life. No one's complaining about that. We earn a lot of money. This is professional basketball. But I don't think that what he was being asked to do or tasked to do at times was really allowing him to grow in the way that he's being allowed to grow in Toronto. Some of that has to do with aesthetically. When you looked at him, early, he was kind of stiff a little bit. He's a stiffer. Games sometimes, even at the pro level, you wouldn't think it's a thing, but it's aesthetics mean stuff to people. Can you do this, that? How does it look when he does it? I'm not that guy. I'm yo, does he get it done? I don't give a shit what it looks like. Does he get it done? And then I'm going to base it off of that. And I think he's always been a guy at every stop who's kind of got it done. And then he came into the league, and I think aesthetics got him a little bit. And I just think you're seeing him with more, not unlike Franz to some degree, different levels for sure, but with more expected of you, with more put on your plate, with more opportunity. He's meeting the challenge and growing in that way. It's been pretty cool. I've been a fan of his too, just because he's Steve's godson, and I've known him, and I know his dad, and I've watched him, and so I'm super excited for that. That's really cool.
I haven't heard anyone use the word stiff to describe him aesthetically, and I think that is the most perfect description of his time in New York, where he would average 20. He averaged 21 a season, from one season, I think, which is not nothing. And when you would watch him play, you'd be like, this dude is not moving. What is he great at? What is he he's not, he doesn't move in a way that's very exciting with the ball in his hands. So right. That's a perfect way to describe kind of what was, I guess, just gnawing at me when I would watch him over the years. And he didn't really impress me all that much.
Sure.
But he's been great in Toronto. Great.
Yeah.
We've come to the last, but not least, award, Raja. It is Sixth Man of the Year. This is a very interesting category this season. A lot of fantastic candidates, I guess.
Yep.
I went with Peyton Pritchard in the Boston Celtics, who, if you were to tell me, Raj, I don't know if you know this about me. I grew up in Boston. I am a Celtics fan. Apologies. And if you were to tell me 2-3 years ago that Peyton Pritchard would have more threes than, at this point in an NBA season, more threes than Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Kyrie Irving, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, insane. That's an actual thing. He's made 23 more threes than every other bench player in the league. He's scored 69 more points than every other bench player in the league. He's played 45 more minutes than every other bench player in the league. And he's doing it on one of the deepest teams, a defending champion. So it's like, you can't really criticize the more minutes thing is actually like a plus for me, for him. So this was kind of easy for me to pick Peyton Pritchard, and that's just like wild. I don't even know what to make of it, but he's having a phenomenal season. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I didn't know all that about you. I won't hold it against you. I actually love Boston, man. I went to school in Boston for 2 years. It's one of my favorite towns. Real talk. Like I love Boston. I got great memories there too. So all jokes aside. It was an easy one, Michael. It was an easy one, right? It is Peyton Pritchard. Like we can go, Buddy Hield's playing phenomenal. You mentioned Ty Jerome. Like there are some things there, but like Peyton Pritchard, for all the reasons, I did not know the stat about how many of the players of that ilk that he's made more threes than. That is remarkable. I just know that when you're on a loaded team like that, that is a favorite to win another championship, and you are producing at that level, and you've clearly the most interesting part to me is to watch the games and see the trust, right? Like it's a hard thing to articulate when I see someone trust a player that has come up from one role and he's matriculated to another role, and then he's matriculated to another role. There's no way for me to put it into words, the trust that I see Jaylen Brown and Drew and Jason Tatum having in him. But that's the most impressive part. Like you talked about all of the stats and stuff, and all that's fantastic. It's the trust that you see those dudes and the coach have in him for me, right? Like that speaks volumes to what he's in there doing on a daily basis, what they see him do, what they believe he can do. And I don't think it's even close in terms of who the award should go to at this point.
I flirted with Amen Thompson and Tari Eason in Houston.
Yeah.
It's hard to separate those two, as if they were combined one human being, I could make an argument there. That they've been absolutely tremendous though. Ty Jerome, as you said, Buddy Hield, as you said, Jake LaRavia, I just want to shout out real quick, from the Memphis Grizzlies. Just a super season from him. Real winning player. Adds so much when he's on the court. Takes off basically nothing. He's hitting shots. A really nice connective tissue for the Memphis Grizzlies. In my opinion, the deepest team in the NBA right now. But yeah, I think that pretty much does it. Is there anything else you want to say about the great sixth men in the NBA, or anything else you want to say about our whole discussion, Raja?
No. I mean, I will say something about six men because I had this conversation with somebody the other day, and I was saying I think it had to do with a high school kid, and he was a starter, and I was saying that they should make him a six man, and people were like, this small circle of people thought I was kind of degrading the kid or like saying, and I was like, no, you missed the point. Like, not necessarily on the Celtics because they're so loaded, but like on a lot of teams, the sixth man is better than the fifth starter. The fifth starter just happens to be a better fit with all the other great players because he's not good enough to like take the ball and do the things. Like I was the beneficiary of that at times. So like I really didn't mean to be mean when I was suggesting that this kid should be the sixth man, but it provides the team with something needed coming off the bench, and it provides in a lot of instances that player more opportunity to do what he's good at when some of those starters go off the floor, So like six man's always interesting because everybody's like, oh, you don't start. And I've argued forever, like, I mean, the six man on a lot of the teams I was on was a better player than me. Like it just works out like that, right?